Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dalaran, and in today's video, we finally got some Shadowlands updates. So, in this video, we're going to cover everything we know as of today. There's a good chance by the time that you guys see this video, some of you guys probably already have Shadowlands access. And that's exactly what's going to be happening. Blizzard will finally be rolling out Shadowlands Alpha. It's going to start off as a closed alpha. That means only friends and family of Blizzard employees, as well as long-time players, some content creators and journalists will be able to get in first. And that means also more information will be put out to other websites like Wowhead that will be data mining all the models for everyone to see. Of course, on this channel, we'll be covering everything that is new, so feel free to subscribe if you want to for all the Shadowlands updates starting on from here out. But let's talk about some of the big updates that Blizzard had in their developer update for the new expansion of Shadowlands. Now, Blizzard put out a full developer update, and I have that linked below if you guys want to go read the whole thing. But in this video, we'll cover all the important stuff you need to know. First of all, we have a badass armor for the background and something of the Maldraxxus Necrolords, like what looks like a ziggurat maybe. God, I love the architecture and the color schemes. This is, I feel like, at least in my gut right now, going to be a very exciting expansion. In this developer update, Blizzard talked about how they're going to be rolling out different parts of the game for people to test in the alpha. They're going to start out with the Zone of Bastion, which was available during the demo on the BlizzCon showroom floor, and also with one dungeon called Necrotic Wake. After a while, testers will be able to explore other zones, as they're hoping to offer Revendreth as the second zone for people to check out with, and maybe bring Revendreth together with Tower of Torghast and other pieces. So this stuff is going to come out incrementally. We're not going to see everything that's work in progress, but rather things that are close to being finalized, or at least are a process where testing needs to be done, but at least there's some sort of a base for it. Please come in with this with expectations that everything here is going to be broken. Half the things are not going to work. So the idea is to take a look at the vision that Blizzard has for these pieces, and then hopefully Blizzard is able to clean them up and polish them up to a functional state. Hell, maybe most of the Shadowlands stuff will be functional when we get to see it, because as of recording this video, the alpha isn't even out. But let's take a look at 3 things that Blizzard is really trying to highlight with this alpha update. There's going to be a lot of things that are going to be very important when it comes to testing stuff with Shadowlands Alpha, and Blizzard decided to highlight 3 things. First point that Blizzard wants to mention is players of all 12 classes will immediately see changes in their spellbooks in this alpha. That means also talents, and in some cases even changes to the resources, which could mean we could have certain resource bars that classes have developed over time gone, or completely new ones be reinstated. Imagine if you were to drop in on your Shadow Priest, instead of a sanity bar, you got Shadow Orbs back. That would be interesting. They also mentioned that they'll have a separate blog coming out in the coming days discussing how they apply different class design philosophies and laid out in BlizzCon 2019, but also, they also decided to just chock this alpha full of abilities. Normally Blizzard goes through the expansions and removes abilities that they think is a bloat to a class, or takes certain abilities that we have baseline and puts them as talents, like Warlocks and their Summoning Portal, where they can teleport to an area becoming a talent in the same row as something like a Death Goal, making an impossible choice between great crowd control or awesome mobility. Blizzard's philosophy in this design is to help players help Blizzard decide which abilities are worth keeping and which ones could maybe be pruned, not by Blizzard's choice, but by the choice of the player community. They said, instead of us going by, let us know which spells you use the most this time, to around whether we've gone too far with unpruning. So they're bringing things back, a lot of abilities back, letting the community decide which abilities did not need to come back. The quote here is, maybe a bunch of folks actually really hated Eyes of the Beast all along. Who knows? I don't think community is going to hate Eyes of the Beast, but giving players the ability to actually contribute in class design, or, well, not maybe in full class design like the rotation and the philosophy behind it, but at least certain abilities that they think, you know what, maybe that didn't need to come back to the class. Maybe we could go without this ability, letting the community decide which abilities should come back and which ones can maybe forego for future expansions, something that might be, let's say, flavorful or just something fun that a class used to have, versus abilities that actually, literally, nobody really ever uses. Then I think that's going to make a better balance for what should come back and where classes should go forward, with Blizzard listening to the community. The second aspect of this is Blizzard mentioned we have been making improvements to our quest interface, and this is just them changing things in the interface in World of Warcraft and how you interact, primarily with maps as well as even the chat functions of WoW. Basically, Blizzard wants to add a 3D indicator for track quests, so you can know if a quest is above you or below you, which is kind of cool. Add-ons already do that, so Blizzard is adding some sort of a 3D indicator in case you want to use one. They also wanted to add ability for you to navigate maps better and even identify objectives on the maps by making pinpoints on those maps. To be able to create a node on your own WoW map, people have already been doing this if you downloaded an add-on for it. So that's just another add-on functionality being added into the game, and then also being able to pin certain chat channels and certain messages in the chat, so you're able to bring up certain functions like, oh hey, Rustfeather just spawned in the chat. Without the need of an add-on, you're able to do this from the game. So this is cool. This is just modernizing the aspects of the game that people use regularly. They're commonly used add-ons in World of Warcraft by everyday player being added as a base function in order to give more interaction with the game aspects. Finally, Blizzard talked about PvP. That's a massive aspect of this. Blizzard decided, you know what? Conquest points are coming back as a currency, and vendors are coming back in the game. So I didn't want to beat around the bush and give you guys, oh, maybe there was a vendor. Yes, this is coming back. Blizzard mentioned that Conquest is finally again going to be a spendable currency earned through rated PvP in Shadowlands, and they also mentioned the players will be able to use Conquest points to purchase not only specific items of the choice from a vendor in the capital city of Oribos, but also they will be able to upgrade those pieces further. So we're looking at maybe what sounds like a Mr. Pandaria style of upgrade system. Back when people used to be able to use Valor points from PvE content or Conquest points from PvP content to, let's say, get your favorite weapon or a favorite pair of pants with the best stats. And instead of fishing for another pair of pants with just a higher item level, just upgrade the current pants you have right now. Blizzard kind of does this in BFA if you are lucky enough or if you earn enough, quests through World PvP to get yourself a trophy to upgrade a piece of gear you already have to just a higher rank. That's just going to be a way the Blizzard is going to go about with Conquest points and upgrades. This is great because it allows a player to get base Conquest gear, and if you were just trying to go for a full set, you can. However, if you're someone who wants to PvP, there's still a continual progression where you invest those Conquest points on pieces that you choose, taking the RNG out of that aspect of the game. So if you're someone who wants to dedicate your character with the best possible stats for specific pieces, maybe specific trinkets or specific weapon types, then you can in PvP. I wonder if this is going to function together with the current RNG PvP system of a weekly PvP chest, as well as random drops from arenas and battlegrounds, which I think it should. Or maybe Blizzard will take it out completely, because now we have a dedicated 100% guarantee for a specific piece of gear together. I still like the idea of getting Conquest caps and then getting random loot rewards from our goodie bag once a week. And I wonder where Blizzard will take this further, but this will be much better to create itemization choices within PvP, and it has this progression system where you continue to upgrade those pieces of gear in PvP. I do wonder if Blizzard will even take further steps to make PvP gear better in PvP, like adding some sort of a resilience system or a PvP power stat in order to allow PvPers that PvP to perform better in battlegrounds and arenas like they used to in previous expansions, or if Blizzard's completely washed the hands of this altogether. I guess only time will tell, but this is what we have right now for the Shadowlands update. We also have rogue Kyrian abilities to take a look at in this video. Rogue Kyrian abilities is what we'll focus on, but I will have a link down below if you want to check out all the other abilities that are planned for Shadowlands right now. Not every spec has every one of the Covenant abilities figured out yet, and I think Blizzard is working on some ideas, but just nothing is concrete. Especially if you're a monk, you only have one ability that is still the same from the BlizzCon demo, which is a little bit weird. Anyway, let's take a look at what rogues are getting. When it comes to rogues, we have Kyrian, Venthyr, Necrolord available, and Night Fae is the last one that's still work in progress. Let's take a look at the rogue abilities from the perspective of, is it cool? Does it sound fun? Does it have a cool interaction? How fun would it be to press this button? Then implementations for it for PvE as well as PvP. And since Blizzard doesn't want us to swap around to different covenants for the meta, like say one ability is better than the other, do any of these abilities sound better? Like, is one obviously better than another? Is there an advantage to one or another, or do they all feel more or less balanced against each other? The first ability is going to be the Rogue Curing ability, and this one seems to have gone through a few redesigns. First, the ability itself has you dealing arcane damage to the enemy, extracting their anima to anima charge a common point, whatever that may mean. I mean, all of you can wonder in the comments below. Continuing reading, damage and finisher moves that consume the same number of your common points as your anima charge deal damage as if they were to consume 7 common points. Now, I have no idea what this means. A couple things that this could mean is, well, first of all, we don't know how anima charge is going to work. So first of all, let's just not jump too crazy on conclusions and write this ability off without actual testing, because I think Blizzard needs to clean up the text for this a bit. So when you deal damage with this ability, you deal arcane damage and you anima charge a combo point. Damage and finisher moves that consume the same number of your combo points as anima charge deal damage as if they consume 7 combo points. So does that mean that when you use Echo and Reprimand, and let's say it anima charges 1 combo point, does that mean you next eviscerate at 1 combo point, the same amount as your anima charged ones, act as if it's a 7 combo point eviscerate? Another way to look at it, if it functions just like it was in the demo, where it basically acted like an extra common point. So if you had 4 common points, it would just give you this anima charge extra as if you had 5 common points. And if you had 5, it would act as if it had 6. Is the idea behind it that you build an extra anima charge and it kind of stays on the enemy for a while, so you can get up to 7 common points. So like you can basically have 2 extra common points if you use this ability simultaneously on the enemy back to back? Or how does it function? Again, we don't really know until we get to see in the alpha. There's multiple different things we need to test. This one has a lot of potential. Could be crazy with the 1 common point eviscerate equaling to 7 as if, you know, the damage number. That would be crazy. I guess we will just have to wait and see. But it sounds cool, sounds exciting, could be busted, but overall, I would say interesting design. Next ability is Slaughter. Slaughter the target, causing physical damage. The target's anima mixes with your lethal poisons, coating your weapons in the next 5 minutes. Slaughter poison deals shadow damage over time and steals a percentage of healing done to the target. This also awards a combo point. So it's a debuff that you apply on a single enemy, and once you hit them, now you get a buff for your poisons that last for a whole 5 minutes. We don't know what the cooldown of this would be. It could be a long, or it could be just something you maintain. And it has shadow damage over time, which could be beneficial for Assassination rogues because of Fan of Knives, but I guess essentially it could also be beneficial for Subtlety rogues and Outlaw rogues. Outlaw, Pop and Blade Flurry, and now Instant Poison would be applied together with this Slaughter Poison to continuously also provide shadow damage to enemies as you basically build up an extra dot. Also, I like the idea of steals a percentage of healing done on target. Almost makes you think like you're a Death Knight in a sense with their necrotic strikes, because if I remember correctly, necrotic strike used to actually, whatever amount of healing the enemy would have gotten, you get it instead. So it was in a way to pressure the enemy while also make the Death Knight super tanky until Blizzard removed it. Unless that was never a thing and I just always had this ability done wrong. Either way, Slaughter seems very interesting, thematically seems pretty easy to use, could be potentially stronger for Assassination than the other specs, but still a very interesting ability, and plays with poisons, which thematically would be cool. If you decided to go with the Necrolords of Maldraxxus, you would get this Serrated Bone Spike, which in a sense is just like Infinite Stars. Embed a bone spike into the target, dealing physical damage over time until they die. Attacking with Serrated Bone Spike causes all of your active bone spikes to fracture and strike your current target, increasing initial damage by a percentage per strike. So in a sense, you stab a spike at the enemy and they start taking damage for the rest of the fight until they die. And the longer the fight goes on, the more spikes you impale into the enemy. I don't know if that increases the dot damage, but potentially could. And every time you spike the enemy, the more time you spike him, the more that initial burst is going to be. So in a sense, it's like controllable Infinite Stars, since Infinite Stars can infinitely stack on an enemy, and the more of those stars fall on a single enemy, the more damage those stars start to do. So yes, it's actually just like Infinite Stars in a weird sense. Thematically very interesting with that until they die part. It just makes you sound like maniacal, like cackling a rogue. Embed a bone spike into the target, dealing physical damage until they die. It's just like, wow, it kind of embodies Rogue pretty well. So flavor text aside, it seems like a really cool ability. Thematically, it's great for the whole bony Maldraxxus dudes, and could have very interesting design implications. When you compare all these abilities against one another, however, I find it kind of hard to see which one could be the strongest, unless if Echo and Reprimand worked in a way where you could use it once on an enemy and then just spam 1 common point eviscerates and those countered as 7 common point eviscerates. That is the only way I could see that ability being stronger than the others. But Slaughter gives you playstyle with poisons and gives you this siphoning ability while also maintaining a dot on your enemies that comes from your poisons. If you're Assassination Rogue, I definitely could see someone going for that because you play so well with poisons already. However, as an Outlaw Rogue or a Subtlety Rogue, maybe you're in PvP and you're playing against other rogues, you want to have a strong dot to put on an enemy, so Slaughter with this extra dot would be nice to put on the other rogue. When they try to re-stealth on you, that poison will get them back out of stealth. Serrated Bone Spike could also be really good, especially if you're expecting a long-term fight, especially if you're expecting on a single boss. That could be insanely strong as it keeps stacking over and over. But also could be really good on multiple enemies. Imagine using Bone Spike on a bunch of enemies so then they dot up and bleed over time. Also again, could be insanely good against rogues in PvP or other classes like healers who you're expecting to survive for a very long while. Echo and Reprimand seems something to play with your resources, while Slaughter just gives you extra damage that has to do with your poisons on a proc, and Serrated Bone has more of this control with a long-term effect. But also, the more abilities you use, the more damage can you do, and kind of like sets up even more burst onto an enemy. Very interesting ideas. I really do wonder what the final Covenant is going to introduce for rogues. But overall, I'm actually very excited. These abilities all sound cool, all sound fun. I'm not really looking at them from like a damage perspective or which one of these seems to be, you know, the most output. If they all were to be very similar in output of damage, which one would you prefer? And they all have different uses. Definitely Echo and Reprimand have a more active playstyle, while Slaughter and Serrated Bone Spikes are more of a passive playstyle with more passive damage that happens, except every time you spike the enemy. I bet that looks so cool. Either way, this looks and sounds pretty insane, but this is everything we have for now for Shadowlands. I think I'll do another video on all the other classes that have gotten their abilities and talk about them separately. But thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed. Let me know your thoughts about what we have on Shadowlands so far, and I'll see all of you guys in another video.